bum 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 ba da 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 da. Go Blue.
Welcome to the Virtual Ball Boys podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined by a trumpet live on our podcast. Otherwise known as my good friend Matt.
Hello. Michigan won.
Yeah.
The first and last year of the college football playoffs, won by the Big Ten, of the four team college football playoffs, I should say.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, yeah. Congrats to Michigan on winning.
Didn't win any in the middle, but
right. Yeah. That was a lot. But hey, you guys are loading up, getting more teams in your conference. So I'm sure it will not be the last that we'll hear from the Big Ten in any capacity. Yeah, been a very active week, as you could imagine, for various things in the football world. So we have a lot to talk about. We are, of course, a couple of days away from Super Wildcard Weekend, which is still not used to them calling it that. But that it is what it is, because I guess it is still supersized, even though it's just the norm.
Yes, it's normal now.
Yeah, it's just normal wildcard.
Yeah.
So we will obviously talk about the playoffs. We'll give our picks, all that jazz later on. We're also going to give our Super Bowl prediction later on, our individual Super Bowl predictions. We'll also rank the playoff teams by likability. Me and Matt have individually listed the teams, and we're gonna look at the collective likability ranking of the playoff teams later on. But we have a lot to review, a lot of news to go over, and yes, another week where we're not even gonna touch VBFL, because fuck that would make for a very long podcast. So let's go ahead and start with week 18, our final regular season recap here, starting with the game of the week, and it really was going to just come down to the two massive playoff-like games in this week that going into it. It was going to come down to Bills, Dolphins, Texans, Colts. And I'm going to give the edge to the Bills at Dolphins, mainly because of kind of the surreal nature of what has transpired over the last couple of weeks, where I would say around Thanksgiving, it felt like we felt pretty confident that the Dolphins were going to win the AFC East, and then the Bills just have gone on a run. They have not lost since their bye week, even if the wins have been ugly at times. They have been winning games, and they on Sunday, despite being down 14-7, and looking like, or I think it was actually, it was 14-7, and going into the fourth quarter, that it was just a low scoring game. They were not getting a ton of chances, and then a kickoff return essentially sparked the Bills to come back, and the final score was 21-14, and the Buffalo Bills went from potentially being out of the playoffs altogether to being a 2 seed.
Which is what you would have thought preseason, but
right.
Not week 3.
Right, like if you were to go back to October, or even early November for that matter, to say that the Bills would be a 2 seed, is nutty, and now looking at them, it is kind of surreal that the Dolphins are now a 6 seed, having to go to Kansas City to face the Chiefs in the first round. The Bills will be hosting a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if the Bills win that game, they'll get to host another divisional round game. And it's as if the entire season didn't happen for the Bills almost. Like, everything, all the ups and downs, all the wildness, the offensive coordinator being fired, Sean McDermott channeling 9/11 when talking to Steve. Granted, that was years ago, but that report came out this year.
Hasn't lost since that report came out.
Hasn't lost. Von Miller and the domestic violence allegations, being charged with them. Like, it's just that whole mess that's been going on. Like, the Bills have been a mess this year, and yet here they are as the 2 seed. It's wild. And I don't know. I think the Bills are a team to be reckoned with. I also still feel like I don't want to trust them completely. But the fact that they're in the position that they are, and that at the very least they will not have to play on the road until at the earliest the AFC Championship game, is it really good news for Buffalo. Yes, they lost last year at home against the Bengals, but again, this is a team that will like to have their home field advantage, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
The blowout of the week goes to the Falcons at the Saints. And this was a 48-7 victory, and for a game that ultimately ended up being meaningless, since both teams were competing for a playoff spot, and then neither ended up making it because the Bucs took care of business, and the wild card was wrapped up by the Packers. The Saints decided to cause a little bit of a stir because the team as a collective decided, hey, Jamal Williams, he's been a very key part of our team. We should get him one last touchdown. And so when they went to victory formation, they decided to go ahead and run the touchdown down the field and throw off the Falcons defense, who thought they would just have to kneel out and just get out of there, end the misery that was their loss. And that did not make people happy, including head coach of the Saints, Dennis Allen, who felt like it was a disrespect to the game. And Matt, did you at all follow this whole saga?
Yeah, it was fucking hilarious.
Because, like, I don't know, like, I think I see both ends of it, where I'm like, I think it's commendable that the team wanted to give Jamal Williams another touchdown. Jamal Williams is a very fun player in the league and deserves the opportunity to get that. And I feel like Dennis Allen vouching for the Falcons is a bad look. like listen, like I get that I get that you were not listened to, and that the team collectively decided to not listen to you, which is a bad sign for you as a head coach, but I guess besides the point. But like the fact that you were basically on the Falcons sides for that was not a good look. That being said, there were some offensive linemen that made the argument online that, and I felt like, okay, I get what they mean. You don't want to make that a regular thing when you are going into victory formation and then throwing people off with that, especially when it's not necessary. It's mainly because that could encourage the defense to completely blow up the offensive lineman every single time, even in victory formation, and that could cause people to get hurt. And so it's I get it from a couple angles, but I also think it was still hilarious. I think there's room for both.
It's also hilarious because it got to end the career of Arthur Smith.
Yes, we'll get to that in a bit here. But I want to close it out with the chaos of the week. And this is obvious. This is just an obvious one here. I mean, yeah, like, it's fun. It would be fun to talk about the Giants blowing out the Eagles of the last week. But really, the chaos of the week goes to the Tennessee Titans, who, in what ended up being Mike Vrabel's last game as the Titans head coach. Again, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
The Titans once again went into berserker mode. The team that I just feel like always upsets a team, like they just are always there to be like the thorn in a team's side, and they basically mercifully ended the Jaguars season, which had sneakily turned into a disaster, having lost 5 of their last 6 games down the stretch. Kind of Eagles-esque for the Jaguars, but unlike the Eagles, the Jaguars, upon losing, miss out on the playoffs altogether because of that, and instead put the Bills and Steelers in their place, and the Texans as your hosting team So CJ Stroud gets to be won the AFC South as I predicted. It never wavered from, truly.
Never wavered. Never was a doubt.
Never a doubt in my mind.
In your mind.
No.
We both got one of those with Texas teams, which is funny.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much. But yeah, no. Like the Jaguars just had a bad end to a year. It's unfortunate. I think a lot of people are looking at Trevor Lawrence as maybe he was injured and that's why his play ended up getting bad down the stretch. The offense just did not work well without Christian Kirk, and their defense was just piss poor.
Yep.
So it's how it is. These things happen and it sucks, and I feel for Jaguars fans. But so be it. Yeah. So that was our three big games, highlighting games of the week. A lot of interesting games over the course of the week, but really, it just was all stuff that decided the playoff matchups. Really nothing else of major note. Some maybe notable injuries going into this week, but we'll kind of talk about that when we get to those matchups. Let's get to the firing news because we got quite a few to talk about, and one news that we're kind of waiting to hear about. But everything else feels like it has begun to crystallize here. We're going to start with Arthur Smith. As Matt brought up, Arthur Smith is out. Been fired as the Falcons head coach. This was reported basically hours after the game ended for the Falcons. It was late at night, and Arthur Smith was let go.
Every fantasy football player rejoiced.
Yeah, I mean, this was this Arthur Smith ended up being the punching bag of this season. It felt like not like Brandon Staley was to Josh McDaniels was, but they got fired earlier in the year. So the entire stretch of the year, it felt like Arthur Smith ended up being the punching bag. And look, like no one really expected him to win Coach of the Year. Like no one ever predicted that. But it is really disappointing if you're looking at Arthur Smith, who had such a great career as the Titans OC. Getting this opportunity and then going 7-10 for 3 straight years is a bummer. But when you look at it, I mean, nothing was working, and this is a Falcons team that's supposed to be kind of loaded, as you've pointed out, Matt.
Yeah. But Tyler Algier's got to get his carries. Mac Hollins got to get targets.
Yeah,
it's not just obviously like they don't have great quarterback situation, but that's another thing that they could have solved this offseason.
Yeah. What was the he was a Titans tight end, then became a Patriots tight end.
Jonnu Smith.
That's it. That Jonnu Smith isn't he on the Falcons as well? And he keeps on throwing it to him and not Kyle Pitts.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Like Jonnu's a great tight end, but you don't draft Kyle Pitts as high as you do and then not target him.
It's
what the fuck are you doing? And then it's
bizarre.
It's bizarre, but then it's also the what's the right word for this? The stubbornness.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute stubbornness to not recognize. And when people say, "Hey, why don't you use your good players?" Oh, well, I'm not going to bend to those fantasy nerds.
Yeah, but then it's not about fantasy. It's about using talent.
The good players.
It's about using the talent that was selected for you. I will say this, the general manager Terry Fontenot or whatever. I never know how to properly pronounce his last name, but he's he's taking a backseat, it seems like, or at least the Falcons are forcing him to take a backseat to the coaching search, which I think is interesting. Yeah. And I wonder if that means that if whoever they end up hiring as head coach, if they might get rid of him, if they might get rid of Terry, just to be like, well, maybe this head coach that we hire is going to have full control over this team. Which I think would be an odd choice, because I will say, despite everything that happened with the Falcons this year, I think that everyone is kind of in agreement that this team does have a pretty decent roster on its hands. And I think really the biggest aspect of why this team failed was was how the offense was run and how and obviously the defense didn't end up playing to like an amazing potential either, but like that was the biggest issue was the fact that they didn't get a quarterback. But then beyond that is just I guess my point is I don't really see why you would want to get rid of your general manager after I think that he's generally done a good job acquiring talent. But I get maybe like, all right, if you are kind of wanting to turn the page a little bit, that maybe you want to find someone new, and maybe you want someone to pair well with whoever you end up hiring as your head coach.
Yeah.
Who knows? Something tells me that it could, if he becomes available, and we'll talk about Bill Belichick in a second. This feels that, like, to me, the idea of hey, we're not really going to have our general manager involved, so we could go after a head coach who might want to have more control over the team, sounds like a move to try to get Belichick to me, which I don't know if it's the right move, but I just like I feel like everyone is going to want to clamor for Belichick in some capacity, if he becomes
which
available.
I don't think they should do, but that's just me thing.
Well,
that's just a me thing.
I don't know. I wouldn't give him head coaching and general manager
and GM job. Yeah,
I would give him like a head coaching job, but hire an offensive guy a good offensive coordinator to go along with him. I would not give him full roster control. Like I think that he has himself kind of expressed willingness, if he were to be if he were to stay in New England, he has expressed the willingness to do that in order to stay a head coach. So whether that's in New England or somewhere else, like I think there's an opportunity there for you to not give Belichick full roster control. We'll talk about Belichick in a second here, but yeah, next up is Ron Rivera, who is maybe the most obvious candidate to be fired since the very beginning of the season. Just not so much that Ron Rivera is this like terrible head coach. It's just more so the circumstances around the Commanders having a new owner, just in general, them wanting to reset, and again, the Commanders just continuing to underperform under Rivera. So this just felt like the obvious move, and they are now full swing looking for right now they're looking for their next director of football operations, which is I think a kind of a general manager role, but weirdly they do have a general manager that they haven't gotten rid of yet. So I don't know what's going on there, but regardless, they are looking for a new head coach. Your thoughts on this situation, Matt?
For Washington, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm really out of it today.
No worries.
Let me concentrate on you. I think that Washington is fascinating to me, and I do think that they can that they have pieces there, and I think it's going to be one of the more appealing head coaching positions, but not like one of the top ones.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that does make sense. Yeah. I mean, for the Commanders in general, it does feel like their goal is to probably like they're going to be number 2 in the overall draft.
Yeah.
So they have a pretty good shot at making it to a quarterback, especially since the Bears is in front of them, and we don't even know what the Bears are doing at this point.
Yeah.
So if the Bears are going to be looking to trade down, the Commanders could make an offer, and luckily, since you're in the number 2 spot, you might not have to give as much up instead of having to like be at like 12 and 13 or whatever other pick. So yeah, they're in an interesting spot. I'm fascinated by how this team's going to kind of rebuild and structure. It does feel like they're going into a rebuild. Like it feels like they are just going to blow everything up at this point, because I don't think you're keeping the quarterbacks the same. I would imagine that Terry McLaurin, if he stays on this team at this point, like who knows, like there's a lot of like longtime players there in Washington that like I wonder if any of them are going to be on the move, because they are going to be blowing things up. Like who knows?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Terry would be like the biggest one, I think, that would try to get moved.
100%, yeah. And I mean, they have a lot of great defensive players. Still, like, I mean, their defense had fallen apart down the stretch, but like Jonathan Allen, I think about, like, there's a couple of like key ones, like in the front seven especially, that potentially could get moved as well. Get some more draft capital for them. We had a few surprises in this coaching cycle. We'll start with Mike Vrabel, who was fired as Titans head coach. This had been kind of rumbling going into last weekend, where the feeling was that the Titans were going to maybe just sit down with him, figure things out. There were some reports that potentially Vrabel did not get along with the general manager, and I think now after they got rid of him, it sounds like maybe there was more of a disagreement between Vrabel and ownership. I think that ownership felt like they wanted to go into a fresh direction and didn't want to give Vrabel another year. And they were...
Well, that's true.
Well, see, right. And so they were going to initially hold on to him, try to get a trade, and then Amy Adams, the owner of the team, then stated that they were going to hold off, or rather they decided, like, let's not do the trade, let's just get rid of him, because otherwise we're going to fall behind in the coaching search. Let's just get rid of him.
Yeah. Which I get to an extent, but also it's still really early.
Right.
And Vrabel is that good of a coach that you could have at least gotten something for him.
That's the thing I was thinking about. Like, yeah, like Vrabel has now become the hot cat. It's gonna be one of the hottest candidates on the market. Like, this is gonna be a cycle in general that's gonna be really fascinating. Like, we don't know what the future of Jim Harbaugh is at Michigan. By all indications, it seems like he is exploring the option of wanting to be in the NFL. We know that Bill Belichick, again, as we mentioned, like, he might be released to the world, which sounds ominous. But like, Vrabel to me is like the best candidate when you're talking about someone who has experience as being a head coach, because this is the guy who took over a Giants team and then led them to a wild card, which had a hand in knocking and ending the Brady Belichick era in the Patriots, ended the number 1 seeded Ravens, and then went to the AFC Championship game. Then got their blown off. Their doors blown off by the by the Chiefs. But the Titans have been this berserker team, as we mentioned earlier. Like, they have always been kind of fascinating under Vrabel, and they've always played hard under Vrabel. And yes, it has been not great the last few years. After losing Arthur Smith, which in retrospect seems very funny because of how he performed as a Falcons head coach. But Arthur Smith was a really good offensive coordinator for the Titans, and once he was gone, they could not figure out a solution in how to get that offense back working.
No.
And that is the biggest reason why Vrabel ended up probably losing his job. And so if he lands another shot, that should be a big priority for him, is getting a good offensive coordinator to pair with him. With that being said, though, like, even with that being the case, like, I still feel like he is such a good coach. He's a guy that people love playing for by all accounts, and it is just such a stunner to me. And when I look at the Titans as a whole, and I think, Matt, you mentioned this, like, are the Titans, like, maybe the worst job available? Because, like, I look at the Panthers and things are really bad there, but, like, at least with the Panthers, like, you could maybe have some hope with Bryce Young, and maybe with the Titans you have some hope with Will Levis, but, like,
right.
I don't know. There's just something about this Titans organization that feels like has been in transition the last few years, and now they're really going into transition with a general manager who's still relatively new, and now a new head coach, and a roster that's about to lose Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, like this, what was like the main faces of this Titans organization for prior years. Like, I don't know, like, where's your mind at about this Titans team?
I mean, this Titans team is going to have a lot of fucking work to do in their division. They're easily the worst team in the division. obviously this year, next year they will be, bar none. It's going to take a lot. I think they're going to really suck next year, no matter who takes over.
Yeah. I really am thinking that this is going to be a situation like the Cardinals almost, where it feels like they're going to be the team that everyone thinks is just going to be bad.
Yeah. And then they win like 2 random games against Super Bowl contenders.
Right. Like, and then they'll end up being like 4-13, like the Cardinals ended up being, and then being like, oh, there's optimism, and that's the thing. Like, if they do end up nailing the head coaching hire, then maybe you can end up having this a little bit more of an optimism, kind of like Jonathan Gannon has with the Cardinals. But yeah, right now it's just not looking good. And a similar situation for the Panthers at the moment as well. Speaking of the Panthers, they fired their general manager Scott Fitterer, so that is a clean house there for the Panthers. First time that they actually have had like a clean house in a while, because Fitterer has been the general manager, I think, since Matt Rule has been the head coach there. So this is going to be a very different team moving forward. Pete Carroll is no longer the Seahawks head coach.
This was a bit of a surprise for me as well, but I can see it.
Well, so I think a lot of us, I think there was like this feeling like maybe this could be his last game, so it's not a complete shock. But he, by all indications, on Sunday night after the game, he made it clear that he wanted to coach. He wanted to keep coaching, and that he was still going to be his expectation, he said, was to be the coach next year. I guess in conversations, though, the Seahawks were like, we want to move in a different direction. They are going to keep him on in the organization in an advisor role, which makes sense. He is the only head coach for the Seahawks that has ever won a Super Bowl there. He has had a great tenure there as a Seahawks head coach. I think a lot of people in Seattle love him for his personality and what he, obviously the championship that he did bring, and just having been to the Super Bowl twice in general, like that, like, and how good of a run this has been for Pete Carroll. But yeah, there is also the factor that the Seahawks are they're in such a weird spot, because I think they're getting better and better about drafting players. They have a very good young core that they're building, but just time and time again, Pete Carroll's specialty is his defense, and his defense has been the biggest reason why they end up underperforming. And I do wonder if maybe Dan Quinn has been thrown out there because he was the defensive coordinator during the Seattle Super Bowl run. So maybe he gets an opportunity there, or maybe you do have... actually, I don't know. Was he on the Super Bowl team? I know he was on the 2014 team. I forget if he was 2013. Whatever. I can find out later.
I think he was. I can check.
Yeah. But he has the roots in Seattle. I do wonder if this is a landing spot for Mike Vrabel, though. Like,
he was on the 2013 team.
Yeah. Okay. I do wonder if Mike Vrabel would be a good spot here, because he is a defensive mind. He's had a good defense, generally speaking, with the Titans, even when they have been kind of beaten down. Again, it just would be like, could you get an offensive mind that's going to pair well with you? Like, I don't know, could be, or maybe they lean completely into offense and they go for Ben Johnson or something. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the future is, but it is a stunner to me. It's very stunning that Pete Carroll is gone, because that's one of those jobs that has never opened up in the history of at least me being a football fan. I started watching football the year the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and so it's surreal to kind of see him go, but he was fun, and maybe he has not ruled. He's kind of made it clear during his press conference today that, like, he's not done coaching, or he doesn't want to be done coaching. So I don't know. Maybe
he'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe he's another candidate. I don't know.
Yeah.
As we mentioned many times, we are waiting on what Bill Belichick's status is going to be. As on Monday, he did do a press conference in which he kind of laid out a little bit of what's going on. Basically saying that he's just waiting for Robert Kraft to make a decision. He wants to be the head coach. He wants to stick around. I don't know if he has talked about it. I forget if he's talked about it in the press conference or if this was reports, but as I mentioned earlier, he is interested in staying as a head coach, even if that means giving up any sort of direct control over the roster. And Matt, I find it hard to believe that he stays in New England after just what has really been one of the worst years that you could have asked for from New England in a long time. A team that did have playoff aspirations this year and then went on to just completely bottom out.
And you've been seeing the decline over the past few years for sure. Like, they made the playoffs 2 or 3 years ago.
They that was the year that they went to Buffalo and got their doors blown off them.
Yes, yep. So that happened, which is good, but or good that they made it then. But obviously, you've seen the downhill decline since then, and maybe it's the assistants that he brings on that haven't been able to like bring anything out of Mac Jones, or maybe it's the roster that fucking sucks. Just in general, like. You can't have that defense. By the way, you share a birthday with Dan Quinn. I have his Wikipedia page up.
Oh, that's nice.
It's hard to see like this the Patriots team improving in its current state. So I would not be surprised if they wanted to move on.
Like I said, I think it should be a sure thing, but I think that they're going to drag their feet on it because he's considered one of the best coaches ever, and that he has been there for 6 Super Bowls. So I mean, it's I get it's a hard choice to move on, but at the same time, it's been a bit. It's been a bit since you've been in the playoffs, where you used to be consistently in the playoffs, and now it's been really rough, and a lot of things point to this just been a bad season for them, very specifically how the roster just has been very weak in general. And so I don't know. So we are, as of this recording, we have not heard one thing or another. One thing we did hear, though, is that while the greatest NFL coach, but of all time potentially, is maybe out of a job, so too is the greatest coach in the history of college football.
Yeah, this blindsided me today.
Alabama head coach Nick Saban retired, and I'm just including it here because it's fucking wild that we are going to live in a world where Nick Saban is no longer the head coach of Alabama, which he has been a dominant force in college football. He's a big reason why college football is the way it is today, one of the most inspirational coaches ever. And it's in many ways just a blindside for a lot of people. I'd imagine there are people that have been wanting to go to Alabama who maybe might revoke their commitment to it because they don't know who the head coach is going to be. Although it's Alabama, they could probably get anybody.
Whoever they wanted.
Yeah, like it's that
Jim Harbaugh.
Well, so that's the thing though. Like, people are saying, like, what if Bill Belichick decides, you know what, I'm gonna go to Alabama. I'm gonna take on this.
That'd be so fucking funny.
That'd be
insane.
There's a lot of wild choices that could happen with Alabama being an opening. But yeah, so I how this pertains to the NFL, who knows? I think Nick Saban is retiring. I don't think he's gonna make the jump to the NFL. His one time in the NFL did not work out, and I think he's very staunchly made it clear that he does not want to go back here. I think he's probably going to go into broadcasting. So I think that's a good fit for him. I gotta say, Matt, like, between Belichick and Saban, I found Saban to be a bit more likable.
I hate Alabama. Right. I don't really hate Saban that much.
That's where I'm at too. Like, it's I feel like Saban has generally been a good voice, even during this like shift in how things have changed in college football and NIL and all that stuff. As far as I know, he has been on the right side of those conversations, unless I'm mistaken. At least when I say right side, I think like he's been very open to the idea of name, image, likeness, and paying the players and things like that. So that's all stuff that I at least I appreciate hearing from someone who is as inspirational as he is in the sport. So yeah, just a wild day, because we in one day we got Pete Carroll and Nick Saban to step down from their roles. Pete Carroll being a former college legend in his own right, and then Belichick. If Belichick retires in the next few hours here, this is gonna be a day to remember. This is gonna be nutty. I don't know about retirement, rather, but just moving on from the Patriots.
Moves on from Patriots.
Let's a few minor things here. The Giants part ways with a defensive coordinator, Wake Martindale. This comes after reports of Wake Martindale cursing Brian Daboll out for letting go of a few other defensive assistants. This has been kind of reaching a boiling point. There's been reports over the course of the season that Daboll and Martindale had not been seeing eye to eye, and then it felt like there was one week where Daboll gave the game ball to Martindale kind of shortly after those reports, and it kind of felt like, oh, that's a performative move. And now, in hindsight, it definitely felt like that. It feels like that now. But now, yeah, this feels like a very angry divorce. Between the defensive coordinator and the Giants. I don't really have any strong opinions about this. I feel like Martindale did a pretty decent job as a defensive coordinator, so I'm bummed to see him go in that sense. But if it's not working, if the coaches are fighting, then yeah, I would imagine there's there should be some changes there. I don't know what the future of the Giants holds, but hopefully they get a good defensive coordinator in there to fill a good spot and use the talent that is on this defense, which is not a lot, to be fair. The Bears fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy.
Thank you.
This was after we had heard and been hearing reports that Matt Eberflus would likely stay on as the head coach, and that is, I think, at this point the case. So they decided the next thing to do is to fire the offensive coordinator, which, Matt, as we talked about over text, this just felt like the right way to go about it if you're going to keep Eberflus around. Yeah,
you need something to change on offense, and I really, 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 really think that this has to be a you keep Fields for next year. And this is more for like the fact that Eberflus is staying. I think that Fields needs to stay. Otherwise, what's the fucking point?
Right.
And we're just going to go into the same John Fox into Trubisky, into Matt Nagy, into Justin Fields, into Matt Eberflus, into Caleb Williams. Like, that cycle is just going to keep perpetuating.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope for their sake that they keep Fields. I think it feels like that should be the move. Fine, and if that is the case, you find an offensive coordinator that you feel like could work with him. I think that he has shown enough times over, and like, yes, it did not end the way they wanted to on Sunday. I think there was a lot of hope that there would be a big hurrah for the Bears in knocking off the Packers, and it just didn't come to fruition. But even beyond that, like, even though that did not happen, I don't know. I don't think the idea of keeping Justin Fields is that wild, and I think you keep him and you give him someone to work with, and you give him more players to work with, and you're in a good shape. And the Bears have probably the best position of anyone in the draft once again.
Yep.
So we'll see how it goes.
Pick at 1 and at 9.
Right. And you could, if you want to trade down, you got 2
even more.
Yeah, you got potentially 3 first-round draft picks for all you know. Going or like meeting a second one next year or whatever.
Yeah.
It's wild. And then finally, Jaguars fired defensive coordinator Matt Caldwell, which doesn't at all surprise considering how that season ended for them. There we have it. All right, let's go ahead and review some other things before we move on to playoff stuff. First, the picks competition. It had gotten out of hand or when I say out of hand, it was a 16-point deficit going in to or was it 13? It was a 13-point deficit. Excuse me. It was a 13-point deficit going into week 18 for myself. Matt had definitely had a good hold on the lead throughout the season, and I had just had the gap had just been there for a while, and I had not been doing a good job climbing out of it. Last week, I did close the gap a bit. It was a 3-game. I think it was like 3 games was that I ended up going my way. That ended up closing the gap a bit to get us to 13. And so then we disagreed on 7 games, and what almost happened in week 18 was maybe what could have been one of the greatest comebacks ever in picks competition history. It did not happen, but how close it got is wild. Just to walk you through it, we disagreed on Steelers-Ravens, and I picked the Steelers. Steelers won. Then we disagreed on Browns-Bengals. I agreed. I picked the Bengals. Bengals won. Patriots-Jets. I picked the Jets. Jets won. Then we got to so at that point I'm like, all right, yeah, I got 3, and it's probably gonna fall apart here. Then the Packers held on to beat the Bears. Then the Giants, who were my team chaos, and honestly, I was just making a funny by picking the Eagles. But then they blew out the Eagles, and then I got that right. And then it was down to the Rams against the 49ers and the Cardinals against the Seahawks. I picked the Rams, I picked the Cardinals. And the 49ers had the lead late in that game, and then the Rams ended up taking it and winning. And at that point, once the Rams secured that victory, the picks competition was all tied up, meaning the winner of the Seahawks-Cardinals game decides who won the picks competition. And the end of the Seahawks-Cardinals game had Matt Prater come out, and he was kicking a field goal. If the field goal went through, I would have pulled it off. If it went wide, then Matt would have secured his victory. And and I have to tell you, Matt, I was standing up for it. I was just like, holy shit.
You reached peak sports.
No, because I was like, I had thought this was over. And then all of a sudden I went on this run and I was starting to notice it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh wait, holy fucking shit, this is real.
Yeah.
I had texted Matt because I was just like, I need him to, like, I don't want to be like brag or anything. I
live for shit like that.
I want to bring attention to it because I know that at the very least he'd appreciate the fact that this was happening because it's just so fucking wild. And so I was watching this game and all of a sudden I saw the kick go up in the air and I thought for a moment that it was gonna go straight and it just went wide right, and then that ended up causing me to lose that game. But I went, Matt, 14-2 in week 18,
which is awesome.
I went 14-2 to end it, and almost went 15-1 if the kick went in, and I would have won the competition. Instead, though, Matt, you secured the victory with 162 to 110, and I was 161-111. That was our final record.
That's
to
so
end
funny.
The entire competition. It was incredible. And worth noting, in our guarantees and chaoses, we both went 11-7 for guarantees, and we both went 5-13 for our chaoses.
Hell yeah.
So so after all this, like, me being like, oh man, I'm out of it, this is done, it's over, I ended up playing a lot closer just because of this 1 week. It was incredible. So yeah, I went 14-2. I got my chaos, got my guarantee, and I got 13 points. Matt did not get his chaos, but he got his guarantee, went 9-7, and then, like I said, those were the final records, as I mentioned. I want to also bring up another aspect of this end of year stuff,
yeah,
which is I like to go through our entire pick season and see how we performed with each of the 32 teams and see who we predicted the best, who we predicted the worst, and what the overall how did we do individually with each team. Matt, you beat me with 14 teams. You had picked the best with 14 teams. I picked better than you with 12 teams, and then we tied with 6 teams. Or rather, we picked the same amount of games correctly with 6 teams. Matt, I'll start with you. If you had to guess, who is the team that you think you picked the best with?
That's a fantastic question.
If it helps, these usually end up being teams that are very good, or very bad.
How about the Ravens?
It was not the Ravens.
It was not the Ravens. How about the Panthers?
So it was a tie.
Okay.
And you had picked 14 Panthers games correct, as well as 14 49ers games correctly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that helps, when I predicted the 49ers to lose a couple times.
Yep.
Like the Ravens over them, that definitely...
Yep, there was a few times that I think you absolutely knew when the 49ers were going to dip. Yep. So I think you did a good job on that front. For me, my best was the Dolphins. 14,
I can see that.
14 correct on that front, and that was another situation I went back and looked at. It was, I knew when the Dolphins were losing, against the Eagles, against the Chiefs, and then there was only maybe a couple other ones that I was incorrect about. But it was only 3. It was only 3 for the overall. The worst. I tied. I had a tie between the Atlanta Falcons and the Cincinnati Bengals. Usually the worst are the teams that are in the middle.
In the middle and frustrating to watch.
Exactly. Or not even frustrating to watch, just you don't know, you can't predict how they're going to land every single week. And so that makes sense.
The Vikings of old as well.
Yes, Vikings of old. Titans was a no. I remember the Titans for a year was one where it was oh my god,
remember the Titans.
We cannot, we can't do that. So that I only got 6 correct on that. Matt, you ended up having the lowest pick total against a specific team out of the 2 of us. Would you like to guess which team that was?
Is it the Jaguars?
It was not.
Was it not the Lions? Was it the Browns?
I'll say this: it's a team that you have some kind of connection with.
Is it the Bears?
No. It's a more spiky connection.
Spiky connection?
Or you hate them.
Is it the Packers?
Yeah. In fact, the Packers. The Packers are. You only got 5 games correct over the course of the season, which I think comes down. Which actually, I was looking through it. I think a lot of it was when you picked in favor of the Packers early on in the year, and then I think later on in the year you kept picking against them, thinking that they were going to fall apart, and then they did well. 5's not bad. It's still 5 and 12 or whatever. But it's that's probably what ended up happening there. The biggest difference between the 2 of us was the Colts. You had picked 12 games correctly for them. I picked 8. So
nice.
that was the biggest gap. And then the ties were the Seahawks, Jets, Steelers, Bengals, Jaguars, and Chargers. Which the Jets, I think, surprised me the most because I feel like we disagreed on a lot of Jets games.
I'm sure we did, yeah.
And yet we still ended up tying. So I don't know where that how that goes. All right. There is that. Any specific data points you want me to point out for you, Matt, in terms of any specific teams you want to know about?
Here's where the Chiefs is, actually.
Chiefs, you had picked them correctly 8 times.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I ended up picking them correctly 10 times. The Bears, you had picked them correctly 9 times. and I picked them correctly 12 times.
Yeah.
The Giants had gone on a run. And I thought I was going to end up, meaning like I went on the run with the Giants. I had picked them correctly for a lot of the beginning stretch of the year, and then it fell apart near the end. So I ended up picking them correctly 13 times. But that almost was, I think, my best one there. So there you have it for that. All right. That's the regular season recap, and we'll see how the playoff picks competition plays out, especially if Matt has won the picks competition. Like, there's no, like, I'm not gonna be like, well, the playoff must matter or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
However, it'll be interesting carrying over now that I have gotten as close as I did. We'll see how the playoffs end up shaping up in terms of how the final pick totals end up being overall. And speaking of the playoffs, let's get into it. We have a field of 14 that is a fascinating field, and I decided to start out with talking about the playoffs. I wanted to kind of go over where we are at with rooting interest and how much we want a team to win or not. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. And how I do this is I assign a sort of, wherever their placement is, they'll get that many points, and the team with the lowest amount of points is the one that we want the most to win the whole thing. So, starting in last place with 27 points is the Kansas City Chiefs. Not surprising. Matt, you had them at 13. I had them at 14.
Yep.
The Steelers got 24 points. We both had them at 12. For that our 12th place team here is the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, I was gonna be mad at you if they got any higher.
Well, I did have them at 9.
Yeah, that's fine.
And you had them at dead last 14, so 23. Then there is a tie between the Eagles and Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, both of us put them at 11. Eagles, I had them at 13, and Matt, you had them at 9. Then next up is with 18 points is the Rams. You ranked them at 10th place. I had them 8th. Then the 49ers and Dolphins were tied.
Ooh, fascinating.
At 13. I had them ranked at 10. You had them at 3.
Yeah.
I'm not like hating on the 49ers. It's just more like, they've been around a lot. They've been here a lot. So it's just a lot of my likability ranking had a lot to do with just who are some like newer teams, newer faces that maybe could go on a run here. Granted, I maybe went against that for one of the teams I ranked. But we'll see. And then the Dolphins, I had ranked them 6th, and you had them ranked 7th.
Yep.
Next up is at 12 is the Cleveland Browns.
I would have put the Browns if Deshaun Watson was not tied to this team. The Browns would have been higher for me. I want to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up having them at 4. It is bizarre having everything that happened. Like I agree with you. I'm like, as much as I find this iteration of the Browns more fascinating, I just don't want them to get I don't really want them to get the glory in this current era.
Yeah.
I want them to kind of pay for it still. That said, like, I'm gonna hold it against the people who made those decisions, and not so much the people that weren't the decision makers. Which is a lot of the players on the field.
A lot of players
that have, I think, really played well this year, and like Joe Flacco, who was like a new face that they brought in just to kind of replace Watson, and has played out of his mind this year, which is bizarre given the fact that he has been a journeyman quarterback since the last time he was in the playoffs, which is when he was with the Ravens. It's just a fascinating story. I think that's why I ended up having them ranked higher. But I'm with you. It's tough. Yeah. It's a tough team to rank. Yeah. Overall. The 5th place team ended up being the one that we both ranked number 5, which is the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Which I think it's funny that we both have it ranked high, and I think it just comes down to the idea of like, I do find the Cowboys to be an interesting story, and I think also they're not like they feel like a juggernaut and a powerhouse because they are the Cowboys and they have the large fan base and the ratings and things like that. But they've really been not a great team over the course of the last few decades. And when I say that more specifically, they've been one of the few NFC teams to not make the Super Bowl this century.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, like, you do at some point want to see a team like that to get their chance to have their opportunity, and I think that's why
you want to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that you say that, I'm going through all the NFC teams, and I'm like, what the fuck?
A lot of them made it to the Super Bowl since the Cowboys.
Vikings, Lions, Cowboys,
and the Commanders. That's it.
Commanders.
That is it. Everyone else has made it to the Super Bowl.
All the other 12. Holy shit.
Yeah, since the Cowboys.
NFC supremacy.
Yeah. Legitimately, like the NFC has had the most parity of any conference. Yep. The AFC was like the Patriots and the Broncos and Colts and Steelers, like that, and that was it. It
was like also. It was for a while. It was other than the Joe Flacco year, there was a huge stretch where it was either Brady, Manning, or Roethlisberger.
Right, exactly. It's insane. It was absolutely insane. The AFC had like a very tight knit group, and the NFC it was just everywhere. Everyone had the opportunity. Number 4 was the Texans. With 9 points, I had them ranked 3rd. You had them ranked 6th.
The only reason they were a little bit lower for me, and I do really like them still, but I was unsure of their longevity, so I wasn't gonna root for them super hard. But sure, I still like the Texans and I like CJ Stroud. So
yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I guess I was more basing it off of like. It would be a really fun story if the Texans did make it that far.
Yeah,
and therefore
sure.
I would have a strong rooting interest for them. Number 3 was the Baltimore Ravens, which I had ranked 7. Matt had ranked number 1. So that was 8 points overall. Why are the Ravens your highest team for you?
I want to see Lamar get the rated and like silence the haters permanently.
Yeah. I get that.
And I love the Ravens in general. Like, they're one of my favorite teams currently.
Yeah.
So I would and I'm a big Lamar fan. I like this. Everything that this team is doing right now. It feels like it's building towards something. So I'd love to see it actually come to fruition when it wasn't what you were necessarily thinking about at the beginning of the year.
100%. I would say like, yeah, they're ranked 7th for me, but I think. Everyone like 9 and up for me, I would be like that would be fun to see that team like win the Super Bowl. I mean, I guess like I would even be fine with like the Niners because they had not won under Shanahan yet, either. But like it's not that I'm like Ravens are mid. Like I would love to see Lamar Jackson pull it off. It's just. I think their positioning this year and the fact that I think there is this expectation that they're going to do well, the hipster in me is just kind of like,
oh my god,
go a different direction then. That's all. That's literally the only thing.
I've also been there. So
and also the Ravens they have the Super Bowls under their belt. In recent years, at least
over a decade ago, but.
I know. I said, you know what? You're right. You're totally right. It just still feels too recent to me for some reason. And the second place team here is the Buffalo Bills. I had ranked them 2nd. Matt, you had ranked them 4th for 6 points. I think this makes a lot of sense. We have always been on the Bills bandwagon. I like I said earlier, this is maybe the exception where the Bills have been in this spot in recent years. I think the reason why I'm still rooting for them though is because they have never won a Super Bowl. They have gotten there 4 times in a row and lost all 4, and then they have never been back there. And I would just like to see the opportunity for the Bills to make it there again. I'm rooting hard for them.
Yeah, me too. You know, like they were my big Super Bowl wish last year, and I've been a fan of them the past few years, especially.
Yeah.
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 I think they're fun.
Yeah.
And then, at no surprise to anybody.
Yeah, no. Number one on this list with 3 points is the Detroit Lions. I had them as my number one, and for Matt, they're number two. And it's funny because you could tell when I really like a team because I pick against them a lot. Because I don't want to. Well, it's because I don't want to have my hopes up. I don't want to go all in on a team because I worry about my heart getting broken. But I want the Lions to get this. This is, I mean, we were lucky this year that we have 3 teams that have never even been to a Super Bowl playing in the playoffs, which I think is really cool. And with the Lions here, they are as like I think that for a lot of people there's still a feeling that like they're still maybe beneath where the superpowers are of this league. But they're a really good team, and they have a chance, like, if things just break their way and they have, like, a couple of spectacular games, that they can end up in the Super Bowl for the first time ever. And that would just be really, really exciting. And I think Campbell's fun. I think that Jared Goff's, like, career arc has been really fascinating.
I've seen a lot of thoughts of, like, a lot of people have said, Lions-Browns Super Bowl.
Right.
Which would be insane.
That's the thing. Like, it's like or Lions Texans, like one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, like Lions Texans would feel a little bit different because Texans are like an expansion franchise, and the Browns, although the Browns technically an expansion franchise as well because of the whole move to Baltimore thing. Yeah. But yeah, like that's 2 franchises that were historically amazing franchises that have since not made it to the Super Bowl. In the era, so it would. And
3 Lake Erie teams, all 3 Lake Erie teams, which have been various shades of sucked in different points of recent history.
Right, yeah. Who knows? I'm excited for this playoffs because I think that there's just a lot of intriguing teams and teams that are going to be fun to root for and see how their story unfolds. I think all of the story, like, no matter how you break it, even the Chiefs, just to be nice for a second to the Chiefs, I think every single team has a very fascinating story arc.
Yeah.
And I include the Chiefs in that because I think with the Chiefs, despite I think all of us kind of being sick of them, which is why they're at the bottom of this list, this season was so weird for the Chiefs. And it feels like the end of a run almost, that like it felt like the Chiefs were on top of the world and no one could stop the Chiefs, and they
what it took
bottomed out.
You know what it took to stop the Chiefs?
That's that
Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, that's that. You have the Giants to thank for that, because he was traded from them. Anyways, but that's the thing though. Like, it's just like, even like in like the Steelers, which I'm just like, whatever. Like, but if they were to make it somehow to the Super Bowl, it'd be a wild fucking story.
Yeah.
Like, all things considered. So it's just like, I don't know. It's an interesting playoffs. It's a very, very fascinating playoffs. Without any further ado, let's pick these motherfucking games. Cleveland Browns, the Houston Texans. The Browns, these 2 teams are obviously connected by a really shitty trade that happened. But luckily we don't have to deal with that man in this game. Instead, it's Joe Flacco, who has been in the playoffs before, has won a Super Bowl before, versus a rookie in CJ Stroud, who has been playing out of his mind. The Browns defense up against the Texans receivers that feel like are just constantly playing well and breaking records probably because of CJ Stroud, but because everyone's just having a great year in Houston. Who do you think is going to win this game, Matt?
I am very conflicted with this because my heart says Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really, really want the Texans to win. I do think they have the pieces to kind of put things together. But the Browns have been playing so well that I think for now I have to pick the Browns as much as I don't want to. I think that like their defense is just, with how good their defense is, with how good Joe Flacco's playing, and this team really coming together, I think the Browns will take it.
It's one of those situations where the 5 seed is just a sneaky seed. It's just it's the seed that is, we are a much better team. It's almost like the 12 seeds in the NCAA tournament, where like they because those are like the conference champions of like the mid-tier conferences, but because they're the champions, they're really fucking good, and they go up against 5 seeds, which are like good, really good basketball teams, but ones that could easily be upset. And this is one of those circumstances where I'm like, the Browns have been, or might be like the 3rd best AFC team going up against a Texas team that has been a really fun story, and I'm so happy to have seen them win the championship, and I'm glad that we've returned to the 4:30 p.m. Saturday game in Houston. It's been a while, but I'm also going to pick the Browns in this one.
All right. Who's up next, Chris?
Oh, do you not have it?
I don't have the specific order.
All right, I'll help you here. This is Miami Dolphins at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Miami Dolphins at the Kansas City Chiefs. Miami, at one point poised to run into the playoffs, maybe even with the 1 seed, has shown some faltering here. Their defense is riddled with injuries. They've gotten some help, but not the healthiest team in the world. But never one that's going to be completely out of things. Meanwhile, the Chiefs have been flopping and floundering all over the place when you really wouldn't have expected them to coming into the season. This is in Kansas City. The Chiefs did rest a lot of their starters, so they are going to be pretty fresh for week 1 of the playoffs. This is the most fascinating game this weekend to me, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Doubly so because it's going to be 0-degree weather.
Yeah, that's right. I am going to. I think I'm going to pick the Chiefs here. This was a close game in Germany.
Yes.
These two had played each other, and I think it's going to be a close game again. I don't think this is going to be like a blowout or anything like that. I just feel like the Chiefs might, after having some rest and the Dolphins having to play late into Sunday night and now having to play on Saturday, it might be a little bit weaker for them. They're also not used to playing in Kansas City necessarily. I just think there's a lot of factors working against them, and I also just I feel like the Dolphins have had this energy around them, and it's just been kind of like it has just been, the knob has been turned up to max in the last few weeks, where they got blown out by the Ravens and then taken out of their division lead by the Bills. And so I think this is going to be the end for the Dolphins. I'm picking the Chiefs.
I am also picking the Chiefs. I do think that the X factor here could be the fact that it's 0 degrees for the Chiefs, but also Tyreek Hill's revenge game in Kansas City I think is going to be massive, and I do think that he could ball out.
He could, 100%.
So, however, I'm going to stick with the Chiefs, mostly because of the weather.
Yep, 100%. Next up, the Sunday early game, Pittsburgh Steelers at Buffalo Bills at 1 p.m. The Bills, again, got into this position thanks to their win against the Dolphins, and after having an amazing December. The Steelers, this team lost to the Patriots and Cardinals in back-to-back weeks, and yet they turned to Mason Rudolph, and things are starting to look up for their offense. They are going to be without TJ Watt potentially in this game. I think, in fact, that might be already confirmed, because he is dealing with an injury from the Ravens game on Saturday. So that's a bummer. But this is a Steelers team that could wreak some chaos for a Bills team that, I mean, if the Bills had lost that game against the Dolphins, the Bills would technically be seated behind the Steelers. So, kind of nuts. What do you think's going to happen here?
I really feel like that the Bills are going to take this one quite easily. Mason Rudolph has been playing pretty well, and the Steelers in general.
Mm-hmm.
But you see the Bills fire back, and I think this is going to be an easy. I think this maybe not easy, but I do think this will be a Bills win.
I think they get the win as well. I'm a little worried just because I do think that the Steelers are just a bizarre team, and you just never know. And I think the Bills have had problems consistently in the last few weeks. Like, yes, they took care of it in Miami, but that still was they were kind of teetering on the edge there. I'm not like I said, I'm not fully confident in the Bills, but I'm gonna say they win this game against the Steelers.
All right, let's go Buffalo. What game am I doing?
Next is Packers Cowboys.
The Detroit Lions. No, not Detroit Lions. What the fuck am I talking about? You just said Packers. Can you tell I'm not totally with it tonight? Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. Fucking hell.
You're good.
That wasn't even from me not paying attention. Like, that's just... Green Bay Packers at Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay Packers, the youngest team in the playoffs with no Pro Bowlers. Really been playing at a really consistent level. Take on the Dallas Cowboys, who definitely have been playing more consistent. Obviously won their division. Were able to come back behind from the Eagles a little bit after some Eagles faltering. But the Packers usually have their the Cowboys number. Granted, I feel like that's mostly Aaron Rodgers having the Cowboys number. Do you think the new quarterback will continue that trend?
Oh man, this is I do enjoy a Packers Cowboys playoff game because there's been two at least in our era that were spectacular. The Dez called a game, and then the one that was in Dallas that Rodgers ended up winning to then I think go on to lose to the Falcons. I think it was in 2016. I'm gonna pick the Cowboys, but it would be such a Cowboys thing to lose to the Packers again. It'd be such a Cowboys thing. I'm gonna stick with the Cowboys. I think that they've been a better team. They've been such a better team than the Packers, especially since the Packers have had some ups and downs down the stretch. I mean they're winning. I mean I'll give them that, but I don't know. But I also start to think like, oh well, the year that Rodgers didn't win his championship with the Packers, they were a wild card team, and it's just like, oh no, here we are.
Here we are again. However, I do think that the Cowboys' destiny is now not to lose to the Packers, but it's definitely more to the 49ers.
Sure, yeah. This era of
the Cowboys is our 49ers flops. So
sure.
they will beat the Packers here.
Okay, there you go. Next up, Matthew Stafford versus his former team, Jared Goff versus Sean McVay. It's the Rams at the Detroit Lions. I think everyone wanted this because it's funny. It's one of the trade that essentially set forth the 2022 season to be the way it was, or no, I'm sorry, the 2021 season to be what it was, and then and of course a trade that ultimately put Jared Goff in position to win the NFC North have the Lions win the NFC North for the first time since the 90s. This is going to be the first Detroit Lions playoff games that we are seeing in our lifetime. Like I'm pretty sure 93 was the last time. That's kind of nuts.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun one. This is the one I'm most looking forward to as a game. What do you think is going to happen here?
I am terrified for the Lions in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still picking them.
I feel exactly the same way. am going to still pick the Lions as well.
Yep. I want them to win so bad.
Yeah. I feel like it does feel like a game that could absolutely go like sideways for the Lions and things fall apart. They are potentially without Sam Laporta this weekend. They said that there's an outside chance that he does play, but he didn't hurt himself in the Week 17 game. But man, it would be a real bummer to see them go out this early. So I do think that they are a better offense than the Rams, who has a great offense this year as well. And I think the Rams defense is like, this is gonna be a shootout. This is gonna be an absolute shootout because the offenses, both offenses are great and both defenses are bad. So it just depends on who makes the play on defense that I think ultimately wins the game here.
Yep. God, I want the Lions to win so bad, Chris. I want them to have their moment.
Yeah. I hope.
All right, don't tell me.
Yeah, take a guess.
Don't tell me, because I know what Monday night is. So this is the last AFC game. No, NFC.
Yep.
But it's not Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. No, we're on Monday night.
Yeah.
I thought we had one more Sunday game for some reason.
No, we're on Monday night. That was it. We had 3 games on Sunday.
I'm impossible to deal with today.
You got it.
Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay. Both of these teams feel like they don't want to win football games anymore. I didn't even talk about the final go fuck yourself of the week, which is Tampa Bay only scoring field goals against the Panthers.
Yeah.
Versus the Eagles, who they could have been the 2 seed.
Yeah.
But they were like, nah, let's fuck around against the Giants. Jalen Hurts may be injured. This game, I don't know how to handle this game mentally or emotionally. Because it feels like both like Tampa Bay, I feel like, will be more prepared to win team-wise than the Eagles, but the Eagles are generally a better team. I don't know, dude. What do you think?
I'm going Bucks. The Eagles have been a disaster. Like their defense has been non-existent, and their offense has been extremely inconsistent. And I think the Bucks have definitely played 2 of their worst games in a row, and yet I just don't know how the Eagles in their current state stick with Matt Patricia on defense and expect to win easily on Monday night. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just the Eagles are more talented than the Bucks, and that's what gets them to win. But man, it has been bad. And like keep in mind they lost to the Cardinals and Giants in the last few weeks, and I would like to think the Bucks are a better team than both of those. So I'm going Buccaneers.
I think you have convinced me. I was back and forth between the two.
Here's what I'll say: we have not disagreed at all this week. So if you want to go the other way, just to make it more interesting, but it's up to you.
I don't know. I do feel.
If you feel like the Bucks, go with the Bucks. Go with your.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks for most of the same reasons that you said. It is. There's a chance. I think. Let me check. I want to check something super quick.
Well, I'll say
D-Roy odds.
Oh, because my argument, what I was going to say too, is that if the Eagles lose this game, I don't know if Nick Sirianni comes back.
That's also true. Yeah.
Because it has been that bad apparently.
I was also thinking there was a chance that with how bad the Eagles defense has been, it may have cost Jalen Carter defensive rookie of the year.
Oh yeah, I mean
could go to Will Anderson instead.
Yeah,
or Witherspoon.
There hasn't been a super clear favorite with D-Roy. It feels like I feel like there's a few differences. I'm a little surprised that what's Kyle something from Baltimore, the safety.
Kyle Hamilton.
Kyle Hamilton has been incredible this year.
Let's see where he's at on the.
I'm a little surprised that he's not more in the conversation, but maybe because he has had. Like...
I think he's a second-year player, Chris.
Is he a second-year player? Fuck.
Yeah.
No wonder he's not in the conversation then. He
first round of the 2022 NFL draft.
Okay, yeah.
He is only 22 years old.
That's why I thought he was a rookie.
Yeah.
All right. So I apologize, but I feel like we have not seen a very clear favorite at all for D-Roy. Like O'Roy, yes. Depoy is a little bit more blurred lines. I think Myles Garrett's probably getting it, and then Opoy, it could go to any of like between McCaffrey, Hill, and CeeDee Lamb. It's weird year. All right, last but not least, and then we're gonna get out of here, Matt. Right now we're gonna lock in our Super Bowl predictions, and we'll change them accordingly depending on how the results end up going. Who is your Super Bowl pick right now?
I did this middle of the season. I know they're the number 1 seeds. I don't care. 49ers Ravens.
Okay. I had a few different combinations of silly scenarios that I wanted to roll with. I think I landed on Bills over Lions.
That would be incredible. That would be an incredible Super Bowl.
Because to me, it would be nice to see two teams that have not won a Super Bowl make it to to make it there. And then I think the team that has been more present lately and has been needing to get to a Super Bowl, winning it, compared to the Lions, who I think are still in their early stages of potentially being consistent contenders.
Yeah.
I think Bills over Lions would be very nice. All right, and there you have it. That was a beefy episode.
It was.
Of the Virtual Ball Boys podcast. We'll be back next week to recap the wild card round. We'll continue to talk about the news as we get it. We'll probably know what's going on with Belichick by then, but who fucking knows? And of course, we'll give our picks for the divisional round as we narrow down the field from 14 to 8. And yeah, thank you all so much for the love and support. Even if we have not seen any of it, but it's fine. And thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
Good night and good ball.